Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an update. Donald Trump is not playing around. He's come out and said it is 25% tariffs, Mexico, Canada. It's 10% tariffs for China. And he said, you know what? If Canada retaliates, which they're going to do, so is Mexico with retaliation tariffs, he's going to double the 25% tariffs. And so it looks like Trump is about ready to annex Canada, guys. Now, whether or not this is actually going to happen, it possibly could be a very long trade war. Normally, you'll get both countries to a certain degree with higher costs, but you'll also get a lot more domestic production, and you'll also get Canada in a much bigger crisis mode than the United States, considering they rely on us much more than we rely on them, even with the Mexico situation. Although you're talking about Canada and Mexico, that is number one and number two in terms of who the United States trades with the most. But again, because of how big we are in terms of independently being able to produce things, our GDP, other trade partners, we are in a favorable position when it comes to basically any trade war outside of very unique exotic products. We should be able to supplement any issues we have in terms of domestic production or U.S. companies struggling to ship things in because of the amount of tariffs that potentially will be placed on Canada. But this is going to put Canada, we would figure, in a very weak position as we gear up for the 2026, and also Mexico, as we gear up for the 2026 renegotiation, the North American Trade Agreement. You could be looking at the United States in an amazing spot with both Mexico and Canada crippled to the point where we could get an unbelievable trade deal thanks to Trump, thanks to these tariffs. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, it's not going to raise prices at all, because these are pretty extreme tariffs. And with energy, there could be some problems. Apparently, Canada wants to target Republican cities, Republican states, the states that voted for Trump. That is an effort to make the event and the trade war more of a propaganda side piece type thing, which is the way that Canadians know the only way they can win it is by making it propaganda and saying, look at what you voted for. This is not worth it. Let's settle this, because they know the longer the trade war goes on, the worse it is for them because of the reliance factor. And the same thing goes for Mexico. So it comes down to, well, look at your bad publicity. Your people voted for you. Now they're getting hit with higher costs. And, when it comes to lumber, oil, obviously the United States can, we can supply our own oil, but we do get a decent amount from Canada as well. But again, Canada is much more reliant on us cooperating with trade than we are of them. And so I do think it's going to cripple their economy and seriously hurt it. Will it allow the United States to annex Canada? It certainly seems like it is Trump's ideal plan. I mean, it just based off of what he said that it's going to be like economic warfare. That's, I mean, 50% tariffs, if he doubles it, that's exactly what this is. Or maybe 25% tariffs on other industries as well. Is that what he's insinuating? We will have to see. But it does seem like he's trying to cripple them to the point where the United States gets just such a ridiculously favorable trade deal in 2026, or there's going to be some type of annexation to Canada, which is what they do not want. They do not want that at all. Now, I've talked to some people. There certainly are provinces that are more conservative that, may... A lot of this comes down to the United States pitching the Canadians and saying, well, we can offer you certain things. You can keep your healthcare, whatever. They also are, oh my goodness, the healthcare. Well, if you look, on a per capita average, there are huge problems with universal healthcare, like huge. And I think everyone, you should have healthcare. I get it. But, and I believe most people in America realize that, but it's still this like liberal golden spoon where they're like, they've got universal healthcare. Why would they there are serious problems with universal healthcare, serious issues. And Canadians document it every day. When it comes to them not being able to find doctors, when it comes to the quality of care being inadequate, when it comes to, because it's free healthcare, everyone going to the doctor so much, they're way behind. It's a total mess. Not to say ours is much better, but just this idea that, oh my gosh, they can keep their healthcare, whatever. The point is they become a territory. That's what I would want them to be. But Trump says, no, they're going to become a state. But yeah, we would want. I mean, there's a when you look at Saskatchewan and Alberta, there's huge natural resources there. Those are conservative provinces as well, and then the three northern territories also have very good natural resources. But listen, I don't really think that's going to happen. My best guess is this is a bogged down trade war with negotiations to where. And by the way, the Canadians are getting new leadership. That's another thing. I believe in October of 2025, one way or another, with Trudeau stepping down, we would imagine the Conservative Party there to win, and that's going to be another thing. Now, their leader came out and said, "No, it's Canada first," and they're trying to stand up for against Trump. They really don't have a leader right now. They need their election to happen, and it's like all the people from the different provinces, the premiers are talking about how they need to stand up to the United States and hit them with tariffs back, because that's what happens at the start of these trade wars. But the question is, they're going to be bogged down eventually, and they're going to suffer. The longer it goes, the more Canada will suffer than the United States. That's when it'll really start showing the difference in terms of economies. And so maybe that'll be right leading up to the 2026 renegotiation of that North American trade agreement, and we just get the amazing trade deals with both Mexico and Canada. I wonder if that's what Trump wants, but Trump, it's very clear. I mean, there are American companies that are just going to have to pay the tariffs, and that's how we're going to generate revenue. At least some of it. Now, obviously, can we generate most of it to take away the income tax? It's an ambitious goal. It's about $2 trillion. We're about 1/20th of the way there based off of the revenue we make off of tariffs. But with the tariffs upped in China, there's going to be companies that still are reliant on China. China's probably going to make things even cheaper to allow those tariffs to be paid. So there's even going to be cooperation. That's the whole idea. The countries will still do trade. They're going to have to adjust their prices if they want U.S. companies. But the whole idea of tariffs, we want things to be produced domestically. We've got very unhealthy, maybe not so with, I mean, Trump said, well, there's bad fentanyl that's coming in through Canada. I mean, that seems like it seems like you're trying to cripple them economically so you can annex them. And you're just saying, well, it's fentanyl. Because I really don't know of a horrible crisis when it comes to fentanyl flowing in from the border of Canada. I mean, I'm sure there's some, but to up tariffs 25% like this, it seems like he's trying to, it's a leverage play for negotiations in the trade agreement. That would be my guess. Look at this. Texas's governor came out against Trudeau and said the Texas economy is larger than Canada's, and we're not afraid to use it. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not even close with the power of the United States versus Canada. So this is not good news for Canada. Obviously, there's give and takes when it comes to trade wars. You're going to deal with maybe a little bit of a price increase on certain things, just certain sectors, though. This is not really an inflation problem, although people say, well, it'll drive up inflation, but nothing like the Biden inflation with the pandemic and the $1.9 trillion deal they signed there, Build Back Better, that all economic experts admit was a disaster. They had the Inflation Act. It didn't work, didn't reduce anything. And they also did some other things in terms of governance that really hurt inflation, like extending the unemployment benefits, just crippled, drove wages way up through the roof, and it really is like pouring gasoline on a fire when it comes to inflation. But let's focus on this. We'll see what happens with these. I mean, Trump's putting tariffs against everyone, and you have to wonder with the tariffs, it's like, how many of these can you really implement before you do start dealing with higher prices domestically? But listen, when you've got a situation like this, Canada, United States, the media keeps doing this thing. It's like the fog of war. Oh, it's bad for, well, no, it's worse for Canada. Like, let's just call it what it is. It is worse for Canada. Just based off of raw GDP, just based off of the reliance Canada has on the United States. So, to generate their income through trade. So, we will have to see what happens when it comes to this. Is Trump pushing to potentially annex them? I mean, it might ramp up even more. Apparently, I've been reading stuff. It might ramp up even more past the tariffs. So we'll have to see. But either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.